One of the things that we're going to do is record this session, so I hope that's okay with everybody. That way we can use it for other people that may not have been able to come today. This is a startup meeting for Producer Demonstration Site. It is an opportunity for you to either hear again or hear first time just some of the key issues around operating a PDS program. So I'll just introduce the team, if I may. If I could have the next slide, please, Alana. We've got Alana moving the slides for us today because she's in control. So the MLA PDS project manager, the person that both Maria and I report to, is Alana McEwen. Alana is back after 12 months on maternity leave. She's back in the fold. The other person, of course, is Maria Thompson. Maria joined 12 months ago as a PDS coordinator as well. Over the last few years, the size of the PDS program has grown quite significantly. I'm not going to be able to see everybody as I present. So if you've got a question, don't hesitate. I'm happy for you to jump in at any time, or else we'll have 3 sessions and 3 breaks where you can ask questions at the end of each session. But I'm also happy for you to come off mute and just jump in. So once again, welcome everybody, and we'll move through our presentation. So what are we going to cover? I want to give a bit of an overview of the PDS program, just a reminder. We'll talk about a couple of definitions. I'll then cover monitoring, evaluation and reporting, including plans for that, and also pre and post project surveys. Alana will talk us through communication activities and communication plans, and then Maria will cover off on reporting, so milestone reports, what's expected, and also final reports. And then we'll have another session at the end for any questions through the process. So just an overview of PDSs. They are producer group led. That's the key differentiating factor about these projects compared to R&D projects, for example. They predominantly locally and regionally focused, although not all. There's some that are across several regions, I should say. The core aims of PDS programs is to be able to seek demonstrable permanent practice change on farms. So the whole aim of a PDS project is to seek adoption more rapidly than would otherwise be the case. And as a result of that, and the format of the program, and having a robust monitoring, evaluation and reporting framework, we'll be able to measure changes in knowledge, skills and confidence of the producers that are involved. We'll also be able to measure practice change to improve their prosperity, and it could cover productivity changes, profitability changes, sustainability changes, environment, or indeed social benefits. And then we're also very keen to see the extension of project activities and outcomes out to the wider industry. Alana will cover off on that in relation to communication plans. Just a couple of definitions so that we're using the same titles all the time. Our core producers are those that are directly involved in the project. So they might have a demonstration site on their property, and or they're a member of the project steering committee. In the south, we prefer up to 10 producers. Obviously, in more remote northern areas, that may not be possible, but we're certainly keen to get as many core producers as we possibly can. And then the other title is observer producers, and these are people who attend field days, attend workshops or field walks, and other members of the farming group that might receive correspondence about the project. So it's not only the producers that are involved here, but we also encourage you to include consultants and advisors and agents, etc. Let's turn now to monitoring, evaluation and reporting. As I walk through this, the key point I'd like to get across, and I'm sure Maria and Alana will do the same, is that we like to keep PDS projects simple. Don't try and overcomplicate it in any sort of area. And why is monitoring, evaluation, reporting important to MLA? Well, first of all, it's important to demonstrate return on investment back to levy payers, producers, and also to the federal government with their matching R&D funding. It's also an important element of Red Meat 2030, which then leads into MLA's strategic and operating plans. Under the statutory funding agreement that MLA has with the government, they have to undertake an independent performance review every 3 years. And that is really to check that MLA is doing what it said it would do and that it's delivering benefits to levy payers. The final component is just to demonstrate the performance of the program. So, as I've mentioned already, what are the changes in knowledge, skills and confidence of the producers that are involved, either core producers or observer producers? What are the practice changes that have taken place? And then what are the actual benefits coming from those programs? So the framework for the monitoring and evaluation approach, and here again we re-emphasise the keeping it simple. It's really based on 6 key levels, and these are really an interpretation of a thing called a Bennett's hierarchy. So we've got inputs, we've got outputs, we've got changes in knowledge, skills and confidence, we've got changes in practices, we've got a measure of the impact. So what is the actual benefit to the farmers or to the group? And then can those benefits be transferred further than just the group that is operating the program to others in the industry? And also let's capture some key learnings that can be used both in other PDS programs and indeed in yours. So they can be learnings that we expected or learnings that were really quite new to us. We'll now just delve a little more deeply into what we mean for each of these 6 levels. Inputs, that's purely just things that are fed into the program or the project. So, the processes around the project itself. What are the plans for the project? That's including the contract. Any steering committee meetings that are held, having committee notes from that. What are the dollars being invested and where have they come from? That can include both MLA and other sources, plus also in-kind contributions. And then what are the number of participants that are involved, both core and observer producers and also others. Then the next section is outputs, and that's simply just the demonstration or the trial data that's obtained through the program. It also refers to communication products and information documents that are produced. It also refers to field days that are held, etc. So inputs is just what goes into the project, and outputs are very simply the information, the data, the products that are developed from the project. The next part is changes in knowledge, skills and confidence. So how well did we do it? And to do this, we measure, has anyone changed their level of skill or their knowledge and or their confidence about the issue that's actually being considered? So this is going to be found by doing surveys of core and observer participants. It must be done early on in the project, and we'll come back to that a little bit later on as well. And part of the first milestone report is developing the surveys for core and observer producers. But again, as we'll outline in a minute, we like to keep them as simple as possible. The next practice change. Have people changed their practices? Have they adopted different practices? And that's, again, very simply a measure from surveys of core and observer producers, both before the project starts and then at the end of the project. So measuring their changes. And this can also be, people that are intending to adopt different practices in the future. That can be a component of the practice change. The next is an assessment of the benefits or the impact. So by making those changes to their practices, have people in the region actually benefit from the project, and by how much? So, what is the impact? And the easiest way to do this is just a simple benefit cost analysis about what are the costs from making these changes, and therefore what are the benefits as a result of it. And then the final component of the final level is the industry any better off? So, and also, are there any key learnings or lessons that could be applied for other projects? So how might the broader industry benefit from the project? So, for example, if we had a project looking at alternative legumes in say Esperance, could that information be applied by others across Australia with similar sorts of environmental conditions? So who else might the practice change apply over and above those in the regions, as I mentioned? Have we communicated this back out to other people? And we'll get through in the communication plan the types of products that can be used and the assistance that MLA can have to do that. Also, what have we learnt from the project that we expected, or what have we learnt from the project that we didn't expect? So was there any unintended consequences? And that sort of information is important in final reports so that we can continue to learn and build those learnings into other projects as we go forward. Okay, I'm going to pause there and see if there's any questions. I haven't got the capacity to be seeing if anybody's got their hand up. So I'll have a quick look in the chat room. I don't think there's any chats that have come through. So just bring yourself off mute if you don't mind, and let me see if I can answer your questions. No questions? If that's the case, Alana, we might keep going then.
Yes, thanks, Russell.
I hope it's because everybody's very clear rather than very confused, but we'll find out. Just a really quick recap, because I know that for those of you who have recently had projects contracted, it's already included in your objective, but this might be for later on. We really do ask that people spend a bit of time on their project objectives so that they clearly describe what is the key result areas that the project is seeking to achieve. And we also ask that they be written in what we call SMART terminology. So the objectives need to be very specific, they need to be measurable, they need to be achievable, they need to be relevant to the project, and they need to be time-based. So an example over the page is that by end 2025 in a particular region, demonstration trials across, let's say, 5 sites will have increased or decreased reproduction rate, for example, in a mob of sheep. We then conduct an analysis of the costs and benefits of the reproduction rate change to show a positive return on investment. 80% of core producers and 40% of observer producers will have adopted or intend to adopt that particular new practice. But 100% of core producers and 80% perhaps of observer producers will have improved their knowledge, skills and confidence in relation to that trait. And then the final bit is that the results of the program will be more widely disseminated, I should say, with targeted extension and adoption activities such as, and just running it through from there. So that's the sort of the format, if you like, or the framework of objectives that we really are keen to see included in PDS programs. After we've done the M&E plan, we need to talk about, or in developing up the M&E plan, we need to talk about what metrics, what measures are you going to capture to be able to demonstrate success. Some of these are very simple. It can be simply the number of core producers involved and the number of demonstration sites, the number of observer producers that come along to field days or workshops, for example. How many head of livestock are involved and what area might they cover? This allows us to scale up with other PDS projects so that we've got an overall impact from the program. Other things that you measure and are involved could be just steering committee notes, the cost of inputs for the projects, both real and also in kind. The results from the demonstration site, they're the outputs. Also then the benefits coming from it, so outcomes, if you like, from the practice change. The knowledge, confidence, skills, the changes for core and observer participants. What are the practice changes that have been made by the producers involved? And then others include field days held, media coverage, various events and outputs from those events, and then the publication of various communication documents such as case studies or producer guides to help others go down this journey as well. In your full application, there was a table like this. I'll just see that there's a chat come up. Yes, we'll provide a copy of the presentation to everybody at the end, Anthony, so it won't be a problem. In your full application, you filled out this table and you ticked a number of boxes. Just make the observation that whatever you've ticked is the areas that we're expecting to see data on. So, this person, obviously the mandatory pre and post knowledge, skills and confidence, the number of producers involved, the practice change that's been involved, but they also ticked production efficiency, pasture productivity, reproduction, stocking rate, I should say, and reproduction efficiency, and that allows them to develop cost of production and gross margins. So that's the sort of information that we would expect to see coming through from your project. How you measure them then? So you've got your metrics that you're going to use. How will you actually measure them? And it's very simple. It could be the records of the inputs that are provided. It could be steering committee notes regarding decisions that have been taken. It could be narratives or case studies from the producers. It'll be the surveys that we mentioned quite a bit, both pre and post for the project. It'll be data collection at demonstration sites. It'll be conduct of a simple cost-benefit analysis, and it could be media monitoring or just measuring the impacts of your particular website using Google Analytics or whatever the case may be. In your early days, you'll receive, this is for new projects, I should say, you'll receive a template, which is the monitoring and evaluation plan template. In that, we break it down into the six levels that we talk about. And then on this slide, as you'll see, it's just got an evaluation level for inputs and outputs. And we just describe generically some performance measures that you might wish to include. And then there's a column for you to fill out, which is, what of those or others are going to be important for your project. And then the second one, what are the evaluation methods that you're going to use to develop that up? So all very straightforward and if you like, a template to make it easier for everybody involved. Here's the same again, the levels that we've got, changes in knowledge and skills and confidence, practice change, what have people changed as a result? What's the impact? What are the benefits from it? And what are some general observations? So is the industry, other parts of the industry better off? And what are the unintended and expected consequences from the project? What are the project learnings? I'd just like to turn now to surveys. As we mentioned, there's pre and post surveys that we are expecting. We like to keep them simple. And again, we give you examples provided in a template. There's a survey needed for core producers and one for observers. The level of detail in those two will differ. There'll be more detail probably in the core than there would be for observers. But our key point is that please keep them simple. And the other part is, as well as a monitoring and evaluation plan for your first milestone, a development of pre-project surveys is the other component in that milestone. There's 3 sections to the survey. The first is just around, some demographic information, who's involved, what number of cattle do they have, what number of sheep do they have, what's the area, etc. And we'll have a look at that in a minute. What is their current level of knowledge and skills, and what section C is what is their level of confidence and the practices that they currently employ. The demographic information is quite simply their contact details, company or business name, property address, their name, how do we get in touch with them either by phone or email. Then a new section which existing PDS operators may not have seen before, that we've included because it's part of MLA's overall evaluation program, just further defining whether they're a sheep meat producer, a beef producer, or something a bit of both. And then some information about their enterprise, the area that they've got under management, the number of cattle they've got, the number of sheep they've got, or the number indeed of goats that they've got, etc. Then section B is about understanding their knowledge and skills. This is probably the area of the surveys that has been the most difficult, I think, for people to develop. And we're actually having a look at whether we change this quite significantly so as to have a self-appraisal of level of knowledge or skill about the particular issue that the PDS is focusing on. If, for example, it's on reproduction rate, what's their level of knowledge or what's their perceived skills in that. So this is subject to change. And the final section is just, again, a self-assessment about how confident they are about a particular activity and whether or not they already are using this particular practice. So measuring at the baseline what level of practice they're already achieving, and then we'll measure that at the end and thus make a comparison between the two so we can measure practice change. Now, an important part is that the front cover of the survey for core and observers, this is the front cover for core producers. We need to get authority from them that they can be named in final reports, so that we've got their permission to be able to do that. It also, for observer producers, we ask, can we contact you for further assessment about the impact of the programs, and would you like to be put on MLA's mailing list, so that we've got that information. And we do need these, just the front page only, just the front page. We need these to be signed by the participant and then scanned and sent back to either myself or Maria early on, so that we've got a record of that for later. Okay, in a word, that's me. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Either throw it into the chat box or just come off mute.
Hey, Russell, it's Bindi here.
Hey, Bindi.
Hey, I was just wondering about sometimes people do these surveys online, and the opportunity to do that if they need to be signed. Is it, or, can we sign some other part of the document or something else? perhaps?
Yeah, really good question, Bindi. My understanding, I'll perhaps ask Alana if she's able to come off mute in a minute. But my understanding is that MLA, well, yeah, you might use SurveyMonkey, for example, to do the survey, and that's absolutely fine. But we still need, for core producers who have got demonstration sites on their property, to be able to name them in final reports, we need their express permission, and we need a signed signature. So it might mean that you've got to get 4 or 5 signatures, depending on the number of demonstration sites you've got.
Yeah, that's quite doable, isn't it? The observers might be a bit more difficult, but you don't need those by the sound of it.
Don't need those for the thing. You can.
Yeah.
The key to it, to the consent is in relation to both personal information. So if you identify your core site, your producer sites by the producer's name or location or anything that could identify them, we require that consent to be able to publish that. In addition to that, it's also looking at images, video and audio. So if you have any images of people in your final reports, we need consent from those people to be able to publish those images, as well as any audio on or video in relation to any of the extension and communication activities that are done throughout the project. Apologies, I just need to apologise. I'm flooded at the moment. Well, my daughter's flooded from daycare, so she likes to interrupt. So yeah, so that's the key, I suppose, around that consent is, one, so that we can actually utilise audio and video that's developed through the project in the future, through, housing it on our website and that type of thing, and also being able to publish images and people's details within those final reports.
Thanks, Alana.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Bindi. Rachel, I see you've got a question there about, does every PDS require a steering committee? Look, because the basis of PDS projects are that they're producer driven, we would certainly encourage you to have a steering committee, which could be, it might be just the 4 or 5 or whatever producers who have got a demonstration sites on their property, plus 1 or 2 others. But we certainly would recommend that you have somebody helping you to oversee the program. Any other questions? Oh, Anthony, from the start of PDS, how quickly do you need to observer producers to complete the survey? Yeah, really good question, Anthony. And in COVID times, it can be quite difficult, to get people together. So we usually say that your first workshop or your first field day is the time where you'd get observer producers to complete the survey. So we wouldn't necessarily expect you to send that out without seeing them. So within the first 12 months of the project, we'd expect that the observer producers will have had a chance to complete the survey. I don't think there's any other questions coming through.
No.
If not, Alana, this is going to be challenging. Alana, can we turn to you to talk about the communication plans, please?
Yes, just give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to see if this toy has an off button. Sorry about that.
That's right.
I've taken it away, which could result in a screaming match, but we'll see how we go. Thank you, everyone. Sorry that I don't have my video on. I'm having issues with it connecting pretty much every time I try to do it. So I do apologise for that, and I do apologise for the bound to be interruptions that we get throughout this process. So I'm just going to touch on the communication activities and communication plans. So the communication activities carried out in PDS by the demonstration site hosts, participants and facilitators is to ensure that both the relevant local producer community and also the broader industry are informed of the project, understand its value and can access information about the project and its progress throughout. Suggested communication activities, which you all will have seen through the application process as well, is field days and workshops held at the demonstration sites. We have access to provide a project site sign for the farm gate for core producers. Generally, obviously more relevant in a higher traffic area, but feel free to reach out if that is something that you would like for your producers hosts. Progress and results in producer newsletters and social media, and reading about the progress in the results in MLA communication channels as well. One of the keys obviously is reporting on the producer engagement. So reporting on the number of producers attending your events, where the project can showcase any outcomes and get any feedback from those people, and the number of producers receiving the producer demonstration sites group newsletters or other communications through media or other communication channels that you put articles and case studies out to. Shh, please. A key thing to remember is some key messaging, particularly around the program itself, as well as then specifically for your projects. So we need to be mindful of a clear description of how the project will benefit the local producers, so the on-farm benefits. We always need to ensure that we're reiterating that the project involves a partnership between the contracted organisation, whether that's the facilitator or the farming or a farming systems group, or potentially the Department of Ag, and local producers to demonstrate research findings on a commercial property. Always identify as well, you know, the length of the project and who it was initiated by, so the producer group involved in that particular project. And the other key is that producer demonstration sites are funded by MLA to support producers through peer-to-peer groups to pursue new skills, knowledge and management practices applicable to their own commercial livestock production system. So that's just a key of this is what the program's about. And we also ask that all communications include that the producer demonstration site is funded by Meat and Livestock Australia. If it's a co-contributor project, it will also then include the contributing partners details there as well. So when using the MLA logo, and we do obviously encourage you to use both the MLA logo and the newly developed PDS logo. So when you're using the MLA logo on communication materials, it's important to follow our MLA brand guidelines, which cover such things as logo placement, size, colour versions, and clear space. If you require access to the logo, feel free to flick me an email, but we'll also get it out to all the new facilitators as well. So one of the communication activities that you may choose to do is writing articles. So if you've written an article about your producer demonstration site, we do ask that you please send that through to your PDS coordinator, so either Russell or Maria and myself. The article will then be reviewed by us and one of MLA's subject matter experts. And once that initial review is complete and comments have been addressed, it will then be reviewed by our communications team as a final branding check and to ensure that MLA's role is clearly outlined. We do ask to allow at least 3 days notice for checks. So ideally, as early as possible is the best. The quicker you can get them into us, the easier we can get them turned around for you in time for you to actually distribute those in the timeline within your communications plan. Another key is case studies. So case studies are a really powerful tool to increase the interest and engagement in your PDS projects, as well as extending the progress and outcomes of the project out to the wider agricultural community. Under your PDS, case studies are required to be developed on either each demonstration farm or annually throughout the project, depending on the number of demonstration sites. And case studies are to be circulated throughout your core and observer producers, which is done by your project facilitators, as well as through wider industry networks. Similar to articles, we ask that all case studies be submitted through for reviewing for MLA branding and for the PDS coordinators and myself to review as well. In addition to the case studies that are developed by the group and by yourselves as the project facilitators, that we do have the ability to access MLA's feedback magazine to deliver case studies as well. Preferably that this would be in year 2 or beyond of the project, where we're starting to actually see some good results come through. So if you identify that you've got a good story that you'd really like to put through as a case study through our feedback magazine, we ask that you complete the case study template and submit that to the PDS project manager and PDS coordinator. This is available in the on the MLA Comms Hub on our website, but it's also available in the communications guide that I've emailed out to everybody as well. From there, these particular case studies will be developed by MLA to show how producers are effectively responding to the demonstration site. The case studies will be written and available for you to also distribute through your networks. In addition to you potentially identifying case studies for feedback, Russell, Maria and I will also, from the case studies that you guys write and provide through to us to review. So there may be situations where we come back to you to try and gather some more information using these specific templates developed by our communications team, so that we can progress a story on your project through feedback as well. We are aiming to, as feedback's moving to a seasonal magazine, so there'll be 4 magazines a year, and we are aiming to have sort of between 2 to 4 PDSs showcased within each magazine if possible. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity to utilise feedback for our PDS projects, which is great. Sorry, my screen was a bit slow to catch up. The communications guide also includes some tips around taking photos and videos, so make sure you have a look at that as well. And if you're filming a video, ensure that you follow MLA's video guidelines, and it's vital that a talent release form is being signed. So effectively that first page of the survey and the consent and release associated on that basically covers you for this consent if you're doing videos and imagery with your demonstration site hosts. So that's why we sort of built it into the survey process, because it covers off on all of this type of activity, as well as obviously the final report process. So the key is that we can't publish anything without a signed consent. So media, so if your group's looking to inform local media about upcoming events or project progress and outcomes, there's a few steps to take around that. So we do ask that you please advise MLA of any media outreach planned through myself and provide a copy of what materials are being distributed. I will then take that information through to our MLA's media manager, and the key is ensuring that you're always acknowledging MLA and the PDS program in any of those communications that are being distributed. Events, so we've got a few slides around events, because obviously COVID has added some additional requirements. So if you'd like to increase the exposure of your events, so particularly your field days, we can absolutely do that through MLA's channels. We do ask that you complete the MLA PDS event flyer for all 100% levy funded events. So if it's a levy PDS and the event is solely in relation to the producer demonstration site, so as a field day or a field walk, we do ask that you use the MLA template, which is available in the comms guide as well. This then needs to come through to myself, and we'll pass that through to the MLA events team, who will share it on our events page online, as well as doing an email out to the relevant region. So definitely available to help extend the reach of your events to local MLA members. So other important information around events, all field days / field walks require an MLA COVID-19 safe event criteria and application form to be completed. We will, as Russell mentioned, we will get a copy of the slides out to you, and that form is linked in here, but I will make sure everybody gets it sent via email as well. So that form needs to be submitted for approval, and it needs to come through to myself to work with our COVID safe team. So in addition to that application, we also need to ensure that you're capturing any contact details required for potential COVID tracing if required. A couple of other points is just to be mindful of, particularly with field days and field walks, is around biosecurity. So the key biosecurity risks of field days and trials are introducing any unwanted pests or disease to the field site, attendees taking a pest or disease back to their own property, or pest or disease spreading throughout the district or even further. So we've just got a link here, which we'll also get out to everybody, just for some more information around managing risks and safeguarding everybody involved in hosting and attending field days from a biosecurity perspective. And another thing to note is that within MLA's events programs, we do consider webinars as events. So we do ask that you definitely please make MLA aware of any upcoming webinars, including the date of the webinar, whether it's going to be recorded for future use or not, and also the topic and key messaging that's going to be delivered around that webinar. Doesn't need to be huge. It can be all through to me in dot points in an email. That's not a problem. Sorry, through to Russell and Maria and I in an email, just so that we can capture that and make sure that we've got that on file. And where webinars are recorded for future use, we need to make sure that whoever is speaking has signed a consent form with MLA, and that everybody on the webinar is aware that it will be recorded and used for future use. So just to ensure that we're, if they don't want to participate because of that, that they've given the opportunity to withdraw from participating. So the next step is around social media. So social is obviously a great way to generate awareness of PDS projects and communicate progress, as well as advertising your field days. To increase the engagement on all social media platforms, tag MLA in everything relevant to your PDS, and it'll give our social team the opportunity to pick that up and reshare and extend that reach for you. So bringing it all together is our communications plan. So the communications plan is available in the comms guide that I've emailed out to everybody. It's Appendix F of that guide. So basically the steps that we want you to follow with that is complete the first draft of your communications plan using the template provided. Email that draft through to myself and Russell or Maria, your PDS coordinator, and we'll review that and provide feedback. We'll then get that into a pretty close to a Freya, sorry, I just saw your message around social media posts. They don't have to be approved by MLA, although there's no harm in sending them through if you want them to. The key is ensuring that MLA is tagged and that the producer demonstration site program and MLA are captured in relation to being the funding organisation, and the program the post is in relation to. So as long as that acknowledgement is captured and you're tagging MLA, that's all you need to do with your social posts. Sorry about that. So just back to the communications plan. So once we've basically got it into a pretty solid state, we then send that through to our communications team, and the manager within that team will review that plan and approve that as a part of our internal approvals process. So as I mentioned, a copy of the plan is in the PDS communications guide. Once you've got that drafted up, and it is for all the new facilitators, that will sit, as Russell has mentioned, under your first milestone. So flick that through to myself and your PDS coordinator, and we'll get that reviewed and all signed off for you. And if at any point while developing the plans, if you have any questions, just reach out. That's what we're here for, to help with. So this is just a screen grab of the template. So throughout the template, there's some comments in there around the type of information that should be being captured in each of the sections. So one of the keys is always remembering to include your project code in the title. Your background, the majority of that information will come straight from your full application or the background included in your statement of work. The challenge and opportunity, similar. That information, you've already pulled that together for your application, and it is captured in your statement of work. So refer back through to there. The project objectives come straight from your statement of work. Your target audience, so this is who you're wanting the communications to be targeted at. Key messaging, so the first lots of key messaging there is just what I had previously on the slides around the project messages, and then obviously add additional key messaging relevant to your particular project and the topic that your project is covering off on. Your budget, so with the budget, that's specifically in relation to the communication activities. So your original application form, you will have outlined any costs associated with your communication activities, so refer back through to there. And the channel and timing matrix, the best place to get the information for this is in your statement of work, in the communications section, and also the sequence of activities that will give you the information you need there to fill in that section. And then obviously your outcomes and measurements is all captured in your monitoring and evaluation as well. So it's just a matter of pulling it all together and tying it all together. Once it's all done, as it mentions down the bottom, flick it through to myself and to Russell and Maria, and we'll go through that review and approval process. Any questions?
Looks like everybody's pretty comfortable. Alana, well done.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And once again, sorry for the little chuckles from my little redhead. But
That's been very good.
Yeah, if there are any questions along the way to do with any of the communication stuff, just reach out. Happy to help.
Thanks, Alana. As we mentioned with the monitoring and evaluation plan, and Alana mentioned with the communication plan, we really do emphasise that simplicity is the key. So it makes it easier for everybody.
Russell?
And, yes, Nick.
Sorry, Nick Linden here. If I may just do a quick one on the comms, I think maybe an emerging trend for ours is more audio visual, sort of in inverted commas, YouTube style short clips. And I was just wondering, are those sort of comms activities addressed in the media guidelines or the comms guidelines?
I can answer that, Russell.
All right, you go. Yep.
Yep. So yeah, Nick, in there is shush, darling, Mummy's talking. There's guidelines around developing those types of videos.
Yep.
So definitely have a look at it. If you don't feel that it fits the need of what you're chasing, let me know and I'll speak to the comms team about it.
No worries. Look, I haven't checked, so hence the question. I'll have a look and if need, can get back to you. But just something that I think we'll be doing a bit more of, that style of thing.
Yeah, no worries at all. And that's great. It's great for reusing down the track where content is relevant as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Russell.
Good on you, Nick. Thanks. If there's no more questions, we'll now pass to Maria. Maria's going. Oh, hang on. There's one from Anthony. Do we need MLA approval for an in-house WhatsApp group chat? Anthony, I think the answer to that. Oh, Alana, do you want to answer that? Sorry, I didn't see you off me. Yeah.
No, you're right, Russell. Look, I'll say no to that. Look, that's not a problem at all. We have a number of groups that are using WhatsApp or similar communication channels within their group, and that's not a problem at all.
Excellent, thank you. One from Sam, with regard to events in the COVID safe form, what if you're presenting at someone else's event? I think that if it's not an MLA event, it'll be up to the other organisers, I would have thought, Sam, to make sure that they're following a COVID safe form. You might have to fill out one of their forms. Yeah,
that's exactly right. That will fall onto their responsibility. It comes down to events being run by our projects is where the requirement sits for MLA to ensure that that is in place.
Thank you. Maria, we might pass to you to do the presentation on reports. Thank you.
Thanks, Russell, and thanks, Alana, and thank you to all of the facilitators for joining today, and also congratulations on being successful with your PDS applications. We certainly reviewed a lot of them, and it was a very competitive process, so well done with you all being successful. So we've just heard from Russell and Alana, particularly in regards to the surveys, the communications, and the monitoring and reporting and evaluation, or the MER reports, which very much makes up the first component of what will likely be your milestone 1. So subsequent to that, once your project's sort of up and going and you've completed your milestone 1 and have moved forward, your project will then move into, most of your projects will move into a 6-month reporting process, where you'll have a progress report and then 6 months later an annual report. So as with all of the other requirements, we will provide a template which will be available on the MLA website, but also distributed by Alana prior to today. It's a really easy to use template, which I'll go through shortly. It's 2 to 3 pages, reiterating Russell's key message to keep it simple. Basically, as we go through it, you'll copy your milestone criteria. So I think that's a really key point, is that as the project progresses, just ensure that you've got your contract close and easy to access, because throughout your project and the reporting process, you will continually be referring back to your contract. So for the progress reports, for example, you'll copy your milestone criteria from your contract, and then you'll report against each element. You'll summarise key outputs from the demonstration, which Russell's been through what an output is. For your MER plan, for each progress report, you'll provide an updated MER plan with the progress column included, which I'll go through shortly. Your first report, which will probably be your milestone 2, that's where you must include your baseline survey data for at least your core producers. You'll provide progress against your communications plan, details of any steering committee meetings, details of any extension events such as field days, webinars, etc. You'll provide an update on what's planned for the next 6 months for the project, outline any changes to the method, budget, risks, challenges, etc. And you'll also regularly provide a 100-word summary, which is for publication to broader industry. So the template will look like this. As you are required to submit a progress report or an annual report, we do suggest that you actually go to the website and download the template, because that's where the latest template will be. We don't make changes very often, but when we do make the changes, getting the template from the website will ensure that you've got the latest template, saves you having to then transcribe to a new template. So basically, the questions are, is your project on track to achieve its objective? Yes or no? If not, why not? You'll provide an update on your core producer numbers, your number of observer producers involved to date. And then with that, we've also recognised that there are a number of observer producers who have completed the survey, and then you can also add in a sub detail in there in regards to how many observer producers are receiving communications, for example, emails about the project, for example. We then ask for the number of unique demonstration sites. And we also now ask for the locations of the sites. So right back at the very start, you will have seen Russell put up the map of Australia, and there was a dot point for each of the locations for PDSs. So this is where we draw the information to gather the detail of where those PDSs are for that mapping exercise. Under that, we have the achievement criteria for this milestone. That's where you copy and paste the criteria directly from your contract, and then you report your progress against each of the criteria within the report. We can go to the next slide. We then ask for a summary of the key outputs. So that might include demonstration, site results, communication extension activities, producer surveys, adoption and impact. For a lot of these, this will include attachments, for example, with that data and the demonstration site results and any communications to be attached to the milestone report. The next one is what is to be done in the next 6 months. So that's where you outline any upcoming field days, etc., and where it's up to. And additional with that one, it's worth referring back to your sequence of activities that are in your contract. The next part is to advise of any changes to the method, sequence of activities or budget, and also to identify if there are any risks or issues that need to be addressed. So obviously, over the last 12 months, we've seen COVID pop its head up in that particular area. For the monitoring and evaluation reporting, the next section, we just ask for a couple of dot points there, but then my next slide, I'll show you what we'll ask you actually to do in regards to your reporting against your MER. And then finally is the 100-word summary. And I guess with this, it's really important to note, don't just provide an update of the project is up to this. This particular 100-word summary is uploaded onto the MLA website, and it's distributed to external organisations such as SALRAC, NABRAC and WALRAC. So really ensure that the target audience for that 100-word summary will be the broader industry and people who know nothing about your project. So that's where you need to include who's managing the project, where is it being operated, what is the aim of the project, and then where it's up to in regards to the progress of the project. So those reports will be submitted to either Russell or I, and also depending on who your coordinator is, and to Alana. And we'll provide feedback on that and request any additional information that we may need. Next slide. So in addition to the milestone report will be the MER report, and you'll basically use the template that you've completed that Russell went through as your first milestone. And then right over on the right-hand side, we'll ask you just to insert a column, and in there you'll provide an update against each of the MER requirements. So, and that's where you just put in detail to say the results have been collected, the project steering committee, for example, met, and these were the dates. We held a field day and we had 27 producers come along. And also, as you've completed surveys, it's just additional. It's better, if you can add in to say we've received 10 core producer surveys, 15 observer producer surveys, just so the detail is in there. So that's the MER update that we request. In regards to your second milestone, so your milestone where you're submitting the collation of your survey data, we provide you with an Excel spreadsheet where one tab will be for core producers and another tab will be the observer producers. So you'll basically copy the information into the template, including your section A, which is the demographics. For the demographics, it's really important to remember that they'll be reported on individually for each participant. For the example, the number of breeders, the area managed, the number of breeders, so that section in grey, you as the facilitator will be required to determine what information goes in there. And we really emphasise that we only want that to be reported once per business. So for example, if you have a father and a son or a mother and a daughter who are core producers of your group, their individual information will be added in the top in the bright green, so their name and their demographics. But when it comes to the area managed and the number of head, that will be per business. So just to make sure we're not doubling up there in regards to the impact that the PDS project is having. So if it's a husband and wife as well, for example, you'll only add in or merge the cells where just to ensure you're not doubling up on that. For section C, which is the the knowledge and skills, that will be reported individually. So each individual person that participates in the project. However, for the implementation of the practice change, that will be per business. So we'll provide further information about that as well, along with that template, but that just a couple of key tips as you move forward. So that's for the progress reports. For the final reports, so as with all of the others, we provide a standard template. It doesn't need to be enormous. Just ensure you've got the key detail in and keep it as simple as possible. So basically it has an abstract. An abstract is required with all MLA funded projects, along with those key tips which are included in the reporting template, but ensuring that it's clear, concise, plain English, avoids technical terms and jargon, and no more than 200 words in length. The executive summary, we request of a maximum of 1 to 2 pages that really summarises the content of the report. The PDS key data summary tables, I'll go through those in a separate slides shortly, but they'll be added. And then, of course, there's the background. As with the reporting, I mean, majority of you will have already done the background. So that information will be already done in your contract or your original application, and likewise with your objectives. So you copy the objectives from your executed agreement and then determine or outline whether those objectives were met or not. So next slide. We then ask for information about the demonstration site design, an outline of the methodology, the economic analysis, what extension and communication was conducted, and an outline of your MER that was conducted throughout the project. And next slide. We then request your inclusion of your results that outline the primary results or key findings of the project, including the demonstration site outcomes. It's where you put in your cost benefit analysis and your economic evaluation, what extension and communication results there are, and then your monitoring and evaluation. If there are no results from the project, then provide details of the possible reasons that the work undertaken was not successful. And so there could be reasons such as, you know, a drought may if you're doing a pasture demonstration sites, for example, you know, your results may not end in how you had thought at the start. So just include in your final report the reasons as to why it was not successful. Next slide. The final part is your discussion and conclusion. So this is where you summarise the key insights and implications from the project, with a particular focus on how this relates in particular to the red meat industry. Any learnings or knowledge gaps and extra resources required that were identified throughout the project. And we provide a couple of subheadings. So for your key findings, you just provide details of the main key findings, and dot points are acceptable, and then benefits to industry. And this is where you would add any clear and concise recommendations for the practical application of the project insights and implications to the red meat industry. This is where you pop in about the benefits to the broader red meat industry as a result of the project or its outcomes, and any future research and recommendations based on the results of your demonstration site or in your project. In the final report, as I mentioned earlier, there is a requirement to have PDS key summary data. So this is essentially a new component which has been included in the PDS reporting to ensure that the impact of the program is captured. So it really, this summary table provides a project level snapshot of the outcomes of the project. And with this one in particular, the production efficiency benefit, we ask that this should be an average of all sites over all years. The production efficiency benefit metrics must also align to the performance metrics identified in the contract and the original application. So Russell showed that table right back at the start where you ticked what production efficiency benefits. So that will be part of your contract. So just refer back to that to determine what you said you would report on. So that's that one. And the next one, yeah, so that's the table there. So just ensure that you refer back to that for that, the summary data. So next slide. This is where we report on the core number of participants engaged in the project and the number of observer producers engaged in the project. So as you'll note, we do now ask that in the progress in the annual report, so it should be easy to determine and keep track of how many producers you've had engaged. These will obviously be on an individual basis, but as with your survey data analysis, where you are reporting on the number of hectares and the number of livestock from the core and the observer producers, just ensure that that's on a per business basis, not on that per producer, particularly where you've got a number of producers from the same business, to ensure that we're not doubling up there. Then we also ask that you add in your changes and your knowledge, skills and confidence for your core, your observer, and likewise in your practice change adoption, ensure that that's per business for core and observers. Next slide. And then there's the key impact data. So these must align to the profitability metrics identified in the contract or the original application, and you just delete any of these lines that are not relevant to your project and what you've said that you will report on. Next slide. So key timings, which we've kind of already been through, but milestone 1 will really be the completion of your MER template, the completion of your communications plan and ensuring that that's all approved through MLA communications. There'll be the development of your pre-survey for both the core producer and the observer producers. So that's milestone 1. The next report will be your first progress report. So this one in particular will require your pre-project surveys for at least your core producers and that Excel spreadsheet to be sent back, as well as a scanned copy of the front page of the survey document where you've got the producers' signatures and consent. That's needed. The consent's needed to authorise MLA to contact producers for other events and workshops happening in the region, to allow for MLA to contact those producers post project evaluation. So that's sort of for an impact analysis later on. So if MLA are wanting to determine, as a result of participating in this PDS from this year to this year, and then maybe in 12 months or 2 years' time, they contact that producer again to say, as a result of participating in that PDS, have you continued to implement and have those changes made on your farm? And if not, why not? So that's part of the broader impact assessment. And then the final one there is in the consent is the host site personal information and the release of images for the reporting purposes. The second progress report, so a year later, we should aim to have your observer producer survey results collected and analysed as well. So some important information that we just wanted to emphasise as well. So within your contract, you will see that there's your milestones and then a due date. We do ask that you try to submit your milestone report and all of the required attachments that we've just been through prior to the due date, just to ensure that there's sufficient time to allow for Alana and either Russell or I to review and to get back to you with feedback to make any changes or where we've requested additional information. All milestone reports and MER updates, we do ask that they're submitted in a Microsoft Word document. Sometimes we get them in PDF, and we provide feedback to you in tracked changes and in comments. So it just saves an email if you can just send us the Word documents from the start. We're managing, I think Russell or Alana might be able to correct me here, but I think there's sort of 60 to 70 PDS projects. So obviously you can imagine when we receive an email that has an article attached, trying to quickly work out who it's from can be difficult. So we do ask that you just include your project code in all email correspondence, just in the subject heading, but also that all of your documents are saved with the file name at the start. So for example, it might be PDS 31123, MER report or progress report or surveys or whatever it may be. So it just helps us with the saving and the filing from our end. As indicated earlier, those 100-word summaries in your progress reports are published and will be in the MLA PDS update. So you will see your PDS updates and that 100-word summary come out through some of the SALRAC, NABRAC and WALRAC from time to time and across other industry channels. It's also a good way to see what other PDSs are out there as well. So you might be able to, if you do review those 100-word summaries, you'll see that there's a number of other projects out there that may align to the particular area that you're doing your PDS on. So there's opportunity there for you to make contact with that PDS coordinator to see if there's any opportunity for alignment or to share resources, etc. Milestone reports should include any summary of demonstration site results and data with your report. So obviously there's a place within the progress report for you just to add, for example, pasture cuts have been done, feed tests are back, live weights are taken. We do ask for you to submit a copy of that data just in, for example, on an Excel template along with your reporting. As I've mentioned before, it's really important to, if you can, to download the latest reports from the facilitator section on the PDS website, just to ensure you've got the latest templates. It just saves time. And Alana and Russell have both said it before, we're here to help you and to guide you and support you. So as you start and you're pulling it all together, please feel free to get in touch with any of us if you've got any questions at all. It just makes it easier as we go if you reach out and ask those questions early, and we can help you. I think that's about it from me. Does anyone have any questions about the milestone, progress or final reports?
Great job, Maria. Thank you. Either just shove it into the chat room or come off mute if you prefer. Either way is fine.
Russell, I think Alana, you and I mentioned it earlier, that we will aim to potentially run some of the final report briefs closer to when final reports are due as well. So if you've got a 6-year project, and you're thinking about me just going through your final report for 5 or 6 years' time, we will from time to time provide an update and a briefing on what's required in those reports as well.
Thanks, Maria. Are there any questions about any part of the presentation or anything that you're uncertain about? Just to recap, obviously you've got your contract, which has its milestone deliverables and due dates. We'll provide you with templates for monitoring, evaluation and reporting plans, for communication plans, and also for pre-project surveys for core and observers. So we try to keep everything as simple as possible, but also easy for you to complete by using particular templates, etc. I'm not too sure, Maria and Alana, that we've got any further questions coming forward.
No, it doesn't look like it. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time to participate today. As we have mentioned along the way, any questions, reach out. We will, the recording will be available for anyone who wasn't able to attend. So if you do have other people within your business that you would like to actually sit through it, feel free to just let us know, or once you receive the recording, you can pass that on to them. That's not a problem at all. And other than that, yeah, thank you again. Really appreciate everyone participating.